This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. My name is Rockey, and I am the adopted son of a wealthy family. Hailey is my nominal sister. When our adoptive father passed away, she was still young, and I supported the company in her place. I protected her for 10 years and loved her for 10 years. But Hailey listened to the instigation of her childhood friend and hated me for taking away the rights that should have been hers. That night, she and her childhood friend drank and celebrated. My chest was covered in burn marks from her cigarette butts, forcing me to pay back the expenses of her family raising me over the years. Only when she realized I was about to die did she scream and rush me to the hospital. But the person who had loved her so tirelessly was already dead, never to come back to life. On the day Hailey finished her college entrance exams, she didn't come home. I was anxiously searching for her, but couldn't find her. It wasn't until 3 in the morning that Hailey called. When I answered the phone, Tony's voice was on the other end. Tony is Hailey's neighbor, someone she grew up with, and they are very close. Rockey, your sister is drunk and can't move. She keeps calling your name. Come pick her up quickly. I rushed out without even changing into proper shoes. Breathless, I pushed open the bar's door and saw Hailey, disheveled, her strap fallen to her arm, red-faced and being held by Tony. Tony didn't care and was even proud of it. So, how about that? Isn't Hailey's figure great? Anger surged through me immediately, and I slapped Tony's face. I took the drunken Hailey and covered her with my coat. Are you still even human? To my surprise, when Hailey saw the slippers on my feet, she frowned in disgust, threw my coat at my face, and snuggled back into Tony's arms. Rockey, what the hell are you doing here? Tony, covering his face, stood behind Hailey, looking at me with mockery. Hailey, you shouldn't have chosen truth or dare. Look at your brother. He's so anxious he didn't even change his clothes. Everyone's gaze was focused on my attire. I had been anxiously searching for Hailey all day, and now my hair was a mess, wearing pajamas and flip-flops. In contrast, Tony was dressed in designer clothes, his hair carefully styled, and even his perfume was Dior. Hailey tenderly touched Tony's swollen cheek. Does it hurt? Hailey looked at me with irritation. All right, enough standing around. Today is my birthday. I can't be bothered to argue with you. Just settle the bill and eat whatever. I glanced at the table, which was a mess of empty beer bottles and finished cake boxes. What was there to eat? The bottles? Seeing the complete hatred and disdain in her eyes, I realized that, somewhere along the way, Hailey no longer saw me as her brother, but rather as her enemy. I stood there, feeling helpless and lost. Tony taunted me further. Don't blame Hailey. The dare was my idea. I ignored him and went to settle the bill. Quietly, I sat next to Hailey, adjusted her slipping strap, and covered her with my coat again. I looked down and extended my hand to Hailey. Come home with me. In the haze of alcohol, Hailey didn't respond but frowned instead. Next time, at least change your clothes before coming. Don't embarrass me. From a young age, I never even touched my sister's finger, but now she willingly degraded herself, lying disheveled in someone else's arms, exposed to judgment. I didn't know what I did wrong to make her hate me so much. I only felt endless disappointment and heartache. In a hoarse voice, I asked, how long has it been since you called me brother? I was an abandoned orphan, and if Hailey's family hadn't taken pity on me and adopted me, I would have died on the streets from the heavy rain when I was 3. I am 5 years older than Hailey. The year our adoptive father fell seriously ill, she was only 11. With the huge company left without a successor and relatives bullying her for her young age to seize the inheritance, little Hailey cried, burying her face in my chest, saying she was so scared that I was all she had. My heart ached so much. I could never repay the favor of Hailey's family raising me, so I started taking care of Hailey like both a father and mother. At 16, I began handling company affairs. The early days were the toughest. At that time, I was in my second year of high school. To protect Hailey's share in the company, I balanced my studies and the company, often doing homework until dawn and dealing with old foxes scheming for the inheritance. Long-term sleep deprivation led to heart failure at a young age, and I was often rushed to the emergency room for rescue. I heard Hailey kneeling by my sickbed, holding my hand and crying non-stop. She said, brother, I don't want money. I want you to live well. I won't go anywhere. I want my brother to stay with me for life. When my heart hurt to the point of suffocation, I thought I would certainly carve out a bloody path for her, and indeed, I did. In just 5 years, by the time I was in my 3rd year of college, I had gained full control. Because I was an adopted son, I was afraid Hailey would misunderstand me as trying to usurp the position, so I left not a single share for myself. She became the largest shareholder of Henry Business Group, and I was just a nominal executive director who could be dismissed at any time. I only took a $2,000 monthly allowance for living expenses and always wore the simplest clothes. But now, after I had elevated her to general manager, she looked at me me with disgust and said, "Next time, at least change your clothes before coming. Don't embarrass me." When did it happen? When did the Hailey who used to call me brother and ask for hugs change? Perhaps it was when she met Tony. At that time, our adoptive father passed away suddenly, leaving no will behind. All of Hailey's family's money was in the total account of Henry Business Group and couldn't be accessed temporarily. Life was difficult for Hailey and me. She was young and naive, so I didn't want her to carry the burden of the truth. I only told her that the money left by our parents was enough for us to live on. But Tony always liked to take Hailey to fancy restaurants. Whenever I was reluctant to let Hailey go, Tony would say, "Your dad left a fortune, didn't he? Why won't Rockey even take you to a nice restaurant? Is he planning to embezzle the inheritance and replace you?" At first, Hailey trusted me. She would hold onto my arm, looking at me with unwavering confidence. Brother wouldn't do that. But Tony's daily provocations were relentless. At meals, he would look at the dishes and lament, "Since your dad passed away, you haven't had a steak from a Michelin restaurant, have you?" Hailey's face would turn pale, but she still bit her lip to defend me. While shopping, Tony would gaze at expensive clothes in the window and say, "Why won't your brother buy you even one piece of clothing?" Eventually, Hailey's face grew embarrassed, and she became increasingly silent and cold towards me. That night, while I was entertaining company clients and drinking to the point of gastrointestinal bleeding, I opened the door to find Hailey throwing a chair at me, furious. "You have money to entertain company clients, but won't even buy me a piece of clothing. Have you been hoping my dad would die soon so you could take over Henry Business Group?" Tony sat on my couch, watching the scene with a smirk. The alcohol churned in my stomach, and I clung to the toilet, almost vomiting my bile. I couldn't believe Hailey had become so unreasonable, actually believing Tony's lies. I sat on the floor in pain, helplessly trying to explain. If I really had money, why would I spend every night drinking with clients until 2 or 3 in the morning? Am I a drunkard, born to love drinking? I trembled as I reached for the antacid in my pocket, but Hailey was quick to snatch the bottle and dump all the pills on the floor. "I don't believe it. If you didn't want to inherit the estate, why would you work so hard entertaining clients?" I helplessly pulled out our bank book to show Hailey. Hailey always asked me for money to go out and have fun. If I hadn't been frugal, there wouldn't even be $5,000 left in the account. Hailey was stunned. "Is this all there is?" Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at me, wanting to take me to the hospital. But before she could help me up, Tony came over, smiling. Henry must have at least $3 billion. How come there's only this little left?" Hailey's face darkened instantly. She pulled away from me, crushed the pills underfoot, and stormed out. No matter how much I tried to explain, she wouldn't listen. That was when our relationship started to deteriorate. Even though I transferred all the shares to her after gaining control, she stubbornly believed I had tampered with the accounts and stolen a lot of her family's assets. In retaliation, she transferred half of the shares I had earned for her to Tony. Seeing me angry, Hailey looked proud, like a victorious hen, as if this proved she had outdone me. In the bar, Hailey was so drunk she slumped like a ragdoll in Tony's arms. As Tony tried to leave with her, I blocked their way. "Where are you taking her?" Tony tilted his head with a smile that sent chills down my spine. "To a hotel, of course. Or should I take her to your place?" Hailey, still swaying from the alcohol, pushed at me while I held onto her tightly. "Come home with me." But she merely looked at me coldly. "Rockey, if I had known you were such an ungrateful wretch, it would have been better to adopt a dog than you. What I do is none of your business. Let me go." My face went pale. I admit her words struck a nerve. Seeing her in such a state of self-destruction, there was a moment when I truly wanted to let go and let Tony take her to the hotel. But the image of being taken in by Hailey's family was still vivid in my mind. I wasn't originally an orphan. That day, there was a flood. Torrential rain and huge waves destroyed my family's self-built house. My parents went missing, and I nearly drowned. Young Hailey, who also didn't know how to swim, saw me from a rescue boat. Despite her fear, she took a life buoy and jumped in to save me. Bame, shocked, pulled us both out. Hailey thought I was so pitiful that she pleaded with Bame to adopt me. I asked her, "You can't swim either, and we've never met before. Why did you jump in to save me?" Hailey smiled with her eyes and brows curved. "Because from now on, you will be my brother. I saved you, and you have to protect me for the rest of your life." My parents died early, and Bame was also very busy. For so many years, it was only Hailey and I who accompanied each other at home. Apart from her, I really have not not received any other love. For Hailey, what I hold in my heart is not only gratitude, but more so, cherishing and a trace of attachment. I am alone and weak, but I can't just watch Tony take Hailey to the hotel. I called my subordinates at the company and asked them to come and pick Hailey up and go home, offering double overtime pay. They arrived very quickly and surrounded Tony and his group so they couldn't move. Watching Hailey, drunk and being held around the waist by Tony, allowing the hem of her skirt to dance on her calves, my temples throbbed. I forcibly pulled Hailey out of the car. I have never yelled at her from childhood to now. This is the first time. I can listen to you on anything, but today you must go home with me. She has never seen me in a rage, and she was immediately sobered and stunned on the spot, her eyes reddening. Brother, I said coldly to the company's subordinates. Hailey has drunk too much. Take her to the car. Seeing that the duck in his hand was about to fly away, Tony started to accuse me in front of Hailey. Rockey, you are just her brother. How can you even interfere with who she plays with? You are overstepping your boundaries. Do you want to keep her under surveillance so that you can become a legitimate heir? With one hand, I grabbed his collar and lifted him up, punching him in the face. You are only good at sowing discord, aren't you? He immediately let out a scream like a pig being slaughtered, and blood sprayed from his nose. Tony tried to fight back, screaming, "Come on, I will kill you." I pressed on his body and was about to punch his head again. Hailey suddenly stood in front of Tony, forcing me to stop my fist in midair. She was expressionless, holding Tony, her eyes filled with resentment and malice. Rockey, you really make me feel sick. I was stunned on the spot, and I took a solid punch on the temple from Tony, and I knelt down in a daze. My mind was blank, and it was only then that I realized that Hailey didn't just dislike me. She hates me, and she would like to kill me. Hailey and Rockey had a fight, and the employees of the company were stunned. It wasn't until I collapsed to the ground that they hurried to help me up. Rockey, are you okay? Hailey snapped, don't help him. Hailey usually only comes to the office once every few months, and I handle the business affairs. After hearing Hailey's command, the employees looked awkward, but still helped me slowly to my feet. Hailey was so furious she couldn't speak. All right, if even I can't command you, are you Rockey's lapdogs or my employees? My temples were throbbing with pain, and I was too disoriented to stand. In a daze, I saw Hailey lift her black high-heeled shoe and mercilessly step on my hand. The searing pain forced me to lift my head. She sneered, lifting my chin with a smirk, her thin lips parting. Rockey, you're fired. Don't come to the company anymore. Also, pack your things and get out of my house. I was stunned, my heart numbed with pain. Hailey pointed at Tony and told the employees, he'll be the vice president from now on. Tony's arms wrapped around Hailey's waist, as if flaunting his new position in front of me. I averted my gaze in silence. Taking a deep breath, I tried to keep my voice gentle, though it trembled. Do you not want me anymore? Hailey didn't respond. I took a step forward, forcing a smile as I put her coat on her. You've had quite a bit to drink today. Let me make you a cup of honey water before you go, okay? She disdainfully threw the coat to the ground, as if discarding a piece of trash. No need. I won't be coming home until you move out. I remained silent for a long time before finding my voice. I understand. I picked up the coat from the floor and, in a disheveled state, left. That night, it rained heavily. I dragged my heavy head and walked for an hour in the rain before getting back to the apartment I shared with Hailey. As expected, she hadn't returned. I was nothing but a stray dog adopted by Hailey's family. All my belongings were given by Hailey's family. With my owner wanting me gone, I had nothing to take with me. The floor was soaked with the rainwater from my body. I looked around in my damp state, only taking my student ID and dorm key. After mopping up the rainwater from the floor, I left. I moved back into the university dormitory. The next day, my roommates were surprised to see me back. Oh, Rockey, why are you staying in the dorm instead of your villa? Having been drenched all night, I felt feverish and my mind was foggy. Since it was the weekend, I planned to rest well in the dorm. Before I could speak, my phone rang. I thought it was Hailey and quickly sat up to answer. The screen displayed the name, Serena. Disappointment washed over me. It wasn't her. Serena was my high school and college classmate, and also Hailey's arch rival, the heiress of Sam's Club Group. She was a shrewd businesswoman, often clashing with me during project bids, neither of us willing to yield. Back in high school, balancing studies and work often meant I stayed up until 2 or 3 in the morning, and the next day I never had time to buy breakfast. Serena was my desk partner. She would bring me breakfast every day, Today it was sweet potato porridge. Tomorrow it was yam oatmeal, all soothing for the stomach. At that time, I was entirely focused on Hailey and had no regard for her as a business competitor, never eating the breakfast she brought. She would glare at me with feigned aloofness. "I'm only giving you half because I didn't want to waste it. It's not like I brought it for you. If you don't eat it, I'll feed it to the dogs." I took out a pink love letter from my drawer and seriously told her, "I know you like me, but I don't like you. Your actions are troubling. We shouldn't be in a relationship in high school. We should focus on our studies." Serena, who had always been pampered, had never been so humiliated. That day, she ran off crying, asking the teacher for a seat change, and I got a male desk partner. We lost touch. Unexpectedly, we ended up at the same university and even in the same class. I answered the call, and Serena's shocked voice came through. "I heard you were fired from Henry Business Group?" I gave a wry smile. "Yes. Are you here to gloat?" Serena was thrilled to hear my confirmation. "Oh, this is great. You've finally been fired." My mouth twitched. What kind of talk was that? Serena was eager to recruit me to Sam's Club Group. "If it weren't for you propping up Henry Business Group all these years, with Hailey being a brainless fool who only knows how to drink and party, Hailey's family would have gone bankrupt long ago." She eagerly asked, "Is she okay? How could she fire someone as talented as you? Would you consider joining us at Sam's Club? I'll roll out the red carpet and offer you the chairman position." "Really?" I remained silent for a while, unable to answer. Honestly, Hailey was quite heartless. She had fired me and then proceeded to blacklist me in the industry. All the money I had earned over the years was deposited into Hailey's bank account. I only had a bit over $1,000 left. If I didn't agree to Serena's offer, I would have to work part-time near the school to support myself. But Bame's dying wish still lingered in my mind. I couldn't repay Hailey's family for their upbringing, so I promised Bame to take good care of Hailey for the rest of my life. Moreover, I couldn't bring myself to confront Hailey and be her adversary. I said quietly, "I'll think about it." Hailey is well known as a wealthy second generation in our school. She suddenly donated $20 million to our school on behalf of Henry Business Group to build a new teaching building. When she recklessly barged into my dorm room, I was stunned. "Why are you here?" Hailey's expression was grim. "Did Serena call you?" I nodded. "Did you agree?" "Rocky, after working for Hailey's family for so many years, are you now planning to sell all the confidential information to Sam's Club?" I shook my head, then thought carefully. "How did you know Serena called me?" Hailey's trembling voice replied, "You have no place to go now. How could you not agree to Serena? Are you trying to ruin my entire life?" My roommates had seen Hailey at the donation ceremony before and were now trying to curry favor. "Oh, Rocky, your sister is really beautiful." Hailey walked straight into my dorm and casually chose a bed to sit on. "My brother likes to smoke, so I brought you a few packs of Marlboro cigarettes. Don't be too picky, but I've never smoked, and Hailey herself smokes a lot, no matter how much I try to persuade her otherwise." My roommate Jack took the cigarettes awkwardly and smiled at me. "It's too much. Rocky, we're benefiting from you." I felt something was off, but my heart couldn't help but beat faster, hoping that Hailey's harsh words last night were just drunken bluster. I hesitated and asked, "Are you still angry with me?" Hailey gently stroked the back of my hand, her fingertips icy cold, piercingly so. "Of course not." Her red lips parted as she whispered in my ear, "Good brother, I know you hate me smoking. How about you join me today?" A sinister look crossed her beautiful face. Then she pressed the burning cigarette against my chest, leaving a red circular burn. Not only was I stunned, but the atmosphere in the dormitory also instantly froze. I felt ridiculous. Even though I was just a discarded stray, she could casually summon me, and I would wag my tail in response. It turned out she hadn't finished playing with me yet. I felt so cheap. At this point, I noticed Tony was also there, carefully closing the dorm door behind him. My roommates looked at each other, then looked away, not knowing what was happening. I remained still, and Hailey didn't let go. It wasn't until I smelled the burning flesh from my chest that she nonchalantly continued smoking. She leaned against the wall, smiling innocently at my roommates. "One cigarette burn. I'll give you 50,000. Jack, frightened, stammered, "W. What do you mean? Aren't you and Rocky siblings?" Hailey shrugged indifferently. "We used to be, but not anymore." Tony stood beside her, giving me a mocking glance. "Isn't 50,000 enough for you?" Jack and the other roommates didn't dare move. Hailey noticed what they were thinking and blew out a smoke ring. "What's there to be afraid of? I just donated $20 million to your school. If there's any problem, I'll take care of it." Seeing the 5 packs of Marlboro Tony brought, my roommates, led by Jack, awkwardly stood up. For 50,000, they could could burn me with a cigarette end, and there were so many cigarettes, it was hard not to be tempted. She thought I would reveal all of Henry Business Group's secrets to Serena, so she wanted to eliminate any future threats. Realizing what Hailey wanted, I looked blankly at the people seated. Hailey, you are truly heartless. You're not even leaving me a way out. The money I risked my life to earn for her had now become the blade she used to stab me. Jack awkwardly scratched his nose. Rocky, I'm sorry. I closed my eyes, feeling a pang of sorrow. Before the temptation of money, none of my 5 roommates chose to report this to the teacher. For them, this was an opportunity to get rich. Later, my chest was covered in cigarette burns, with no unscathed flesh. Jack, no longer as restrained, pressed my head into the mop sink, lifting it only when I was about to suffocate to let me breathe for a few seconds. After several rounds, I was almost unconscious. Hailey sat on the bed, contently pinching my face, as if she were casually killing a fish on a chopping board. All right, Rocky, if you're willing to be tortured by me, I'm not going to waste my time with you. The game ended with me out of the picture. After Jack's bank account was credited, they called the counselor to report that I was suffering from depression and had severe suicidal tendencies. The cigarette burns on my body were evidence of self-harm. Hailey, as a concerned sister, came to the dorm to take care of me but witnessed the whole process of my self-harm. She was worried and wanted to arrange for me to withdraw from school and go home to recover. The school leaders saw that it was Hailey who had donated $20 million to the school and immediately agreed. Moreover, they thought with my severe suicidal tendencies, if I died in the dorm, the school would be held responsible. The school leader patted my shoulder. Your family is so wealthy, not attending school won't matter. Go home and recover properly. I told the principal that I had received many scholarships, participated in many knowledge competitions, and really wanted to continue studying. I wasn't mentally ill, but no matter how much I pleaded, it was useless. The principal said, look, not only your roommates, but even your sister is vouching for you. Don't make things difficult for me. Just go home, all right? My mind went blank. After a sharp pain in my heart, I collapsed to the ground. When I woke up again, I was surrounded by the sharp smell of disinfectant. The doctor told me that due to prolonged heart strain, I had developed a tumor, commonly known as a cardiac tumor. If it's malignant, I will die. Even if it's benign, the treatment cost would be up to $500,000, and without treatment, I would die. I gave a bitter smile. Where would I get that much money? That day, the sun was shining brightly as I wandered along the riverbank in my hospital gown. Memories flashed back to the first day I was brought to Hailey's home. I was wearing soiled clothes from being soaked, and my feet were in a pair of worn-out slippers. My yellowed hair was matted into clumps. Hailey, dressed in a puffy skirt with a sparkling hairpin, bounced down the stairs, followed closely by a nanny. I stood there, feeling small and out of place. I felt I didn't deserve to live in such a nice villa. To spare my pride, she stopped wearing luxuries and carefully learned my lifestyle, practicing haggling with street vendors. Before Bame fell ill, I was at school, but faced numerous rejections and couldn't secure any investment. Hailey couldn't bear to see me upset, so she had Bame invest in me. Bame said, Hailey's family has been so good to you. If you don't take good care of Hailey in the future, it would be heartless and you'd be cursed by heaven. In the days I was unconscious, I saw Bame countless times in my dreams. Whenever I wavered and considered agreeing to Serena's offer, opposing Hailey, Bame would lie on the hospital bed, staring at me with unblinking eyes. I kept struggling, wandering by the river like a lost soul, hearing passers-by whispering, "Did you hear? A child fell into the river a few days ago and drowned. They haven't found the body yet." Looking at the rushing river, I thought, why not take me too? That was what I thought and indeed intended to do. But as I was about to step over the railing, a panicked shout came from behind. Rocky, don't do anything stupid. Before I could react, Serena rushed forward, wrapping her arms around my waist with all her strength, rolling us away from the river's edge. Serena was on top of me, and I was stunned for a moment. What are you doing here? Serena, panting heavily, said, I just returned to the country today. I heard you were expelled and hospitalized, so I rushed over. I didn't expect to run into you halfway. Why are you trying to jump into the river? I told her I had a cardiac tumor and couldn't afford the treatment. Since living only caused trouble for Hailey, I might as well end it. Without saying a word, Serena put me in the passenger seat and said earnestly, whether you join Sam's club or not, I respect your decision. Regardless, I will first go to the hospital and pay for your medical expenses. She turned around and hugged me tightly. Her gaze, full of unspoken emotions, made the tips of her ears blush. You know I've always liked you. If you give me a chance, I'll cherish you 100 times more than Hailey does. Her sudden warmth left me at a loss, and my eyes welled up. There was someone in this world who cherished me after all. The car door was suddenly yanked open, and Serena was roughly pulled. Nearly falling out of the car. I frowned and saw Hailey next to us, her face pale and filled with anger. Serena, don't you know Rockey is my brother? Why do you keep trying to poach him for your company? Serena sneered. Do you still recognize him as your brother? With the expulsion and hospitalization, I thought he was your archenemy. You, Hailey, fuming with rage, ran to my car window and began banging on the glass. Rockey, get out of the car. She grabbed the collar of my hospital gown, her gaze meeting mine as cold as ice. If you want to leave with Serena, pay back the money we've spent raising you over the years. Don't ever see me again. Hailey was the one who took me to the hospital when I passed out, but as a sister, instead of showing concern, she demanded $1 million in repayment. Autumn wind howled around me, and fallen leaves whimpered in the breeze. I finally came to terms with it. Hailey would repeatedly use the debt of gratitude to coerce me, reopening my wounds, mocking that even after years of a better life, I would always be that worthless stray dog. I forced a painful smile. Okay, I don't have the money now, but I'll repay you in the future. Hailey found the diagnosis slip in my seat, grabbed it, and looked at it in disbelief. Hailey, clutching the paper, showed a hint of softness in her expression. Cardiac tumor? How could it be a cardiac tumor? She looked up at me in disbelief. Are you going to die? At that moment, another person stepped out from the passenger seat of Hailey's car. Tony. Tony, looking guilty, snatched the diagnosis slip away. Hailey, weren't you supposed to help me pick up the new car today? The doors will close soon. Let's hurry. Hailey remained unmoved, holding up the diagnosis slip, arguing with Tony. Didn't you tell me that my brother only had a minor illness and would recover soon? What is this? Tony, feeling guilty but still defensive, said, don't you hate Rockey the most? You yourself said he was just a thief coveting our family's fortune. If you find him disgusting, why should his illness concern you? Serena, unable to tolerate it, scoffed and said, Humph, this is the funniest joke I've heard. He can't even afford $50,000 for medical expenses, yet he covets your family's fortune? Are you out of your mind? If he's ill, go eat some plums. The air fell silent for a few seconds. Hailey's trembling voice came from beside me, her fingers digging into her palm. How could you not even have $50,000 for medical expenses? Tony clearly said that you were kind to me only because you wanted to gain from me. There was no saving. I closed my eyes and stopped looking at her. Serena pressed the accelerator, preparing to leave. Hailey, fully realizing the situation, turned to Tony with an icy tone. So it was you who has always been sowing discord between me and my brother. But this time, I just wanted to live for myself. I quietly said to Serena, let's go. She yelled desperately, Rockey. This was the first time I didn't look back. Serena nodded. The car sped up, and Hailey's hands, clinging to the car window, had to let go. Hailey chased after the car, tears streaming down her face, her voice trembling uncontrollably. I was a bit shocked. She hadn't cried in front of me for a long time. Brother, don't you want me anymore? Seeing her fall and struggle in the street, I closed my eyes in pain and nodded. I'm tired. Let's end this here. Hailey's figure gradually shrank into a small black dot, crying and kneeling in the middle of the road, with a long line of cars behind her. I reached out to Serena. If I say now that I want to join Sam's club, is it still possible? Serena smiled, her warm hand covering mine. Always welcome. In the principal's office, Serena sat on the sofa with a cookie in her mouth. Teacher, I called you before I returned to my country. You haven't canceled Rockey's enrollment, have you? The principal looked troubled. You two families are at odds. Don't make things hard for this old man. She pushed a $50 million check toward him, her eyes gleaming. I'm much more generous than Hailey. The principal's eyes lit up, and he reached for the check. Such a generous offer. But just as his hand was halfway there, the principal's office door was abruptly kicked open, and Hailey stormed in. The principal's hand awkwardly hung in midair. Don't expel him. Quickly restore my brother's enrollment. I'll pay whatever it takes. The room fell silent for a few seconds. She had reopened my wounds over and over, driven me to despair, and now that I had finally come to terms with it, she was saying she wanted to live a good life. Hailey anxiously grabbed my hand. Brother, let me explain. I was so foolish. I didn't realize how good you were to me. I'll make it up to you, okay? Come back with me. I couldn't help but slap her. A crisp smack sound. Hailey covered her face and turned her head away. I said coldly, does Miss Hailey think this is just a game? Is it fun? Hailey's biological mother died in childbirth, and Bame was always busy with work. From a young age, I had to take on both parental roles for Hailey. I treasured her and had never laid a finger on her. I used used all my strength in that slap, releasing all my pent-up hatred, but I didn't regret it. Serena, who had never seen me so enraged, stood frozen for a moment, then stepped in front of me to shield me from Hailey. Hailey, seemingly out of her mind, kept slapping herself, her mouth bleeding, but she wouldn't stop. Brother, I truly know I was wrong. As long as it calms you down, you can hit me as much as you want. Hailey became increasingly agitated as she spoke, collapsing on the ground while staring at me desperately, as if she had lost something precious and was now clinging to it, sobbing and tugging at my pants. Brother, please don't leave me, okay? She seemed finally afraid of losing me. I gave a sarcastic smile, pulling my foot out of her embrace. Don't, I'm just an adopted son. I can't be your brother, Hailey. I pushed Hailey towards the door. Aren't you fond of Tony? Go find him. I'm sure he'll be very happy to see you. Hailey's face turned pale. She clung to the doorframe, trembling all over, then suddenly knelt in front of me. Brother Jian, I've broken up with Tony. I've reclaimed all the shares. He has nothing left. Please, Brother Jian, forgive me, please? I couldn't help but sneer. I'm not your brother. My original name is David. Hailey looked up suddenly, her eyes full of pleading. The room was silent, with only Hailey's low whimpering, like a forsaken stray dog's soft whine. It used to be me kneeling there. I don't want you to go, brother. I don't want you to leave. I said nothing as Hailey continued to kneel on the floor, shaking my hand, her voice hoarse, tears streaming down her face. I lost patience and said coldly, let go. Even the principal couldn't bear to watch and hesitantly spoke. Rockey, if you come back to school, let's forget about this matter, all right? I revealed the burned scars on my chest and said softly, these scars won't disappear because of your words. Hailey's face showed anxiety, losing the confidence and arrogance she once had. I gave Hailey a malicious grin. Do you want me to forgive you? My smile was wicked and twisted. Hailey saw hope and nodded repeatedly. I leaned in close and whispered, all right, then you go and destroy Tony and I'll forgive you, okay? Hailey looked at me incredulously, eager for my guarantee. As long as I do that, you'll come back, brother? As soon as the words were out, Serena also looked at me nervously. I said, Hailey, you're truly disgusting. I will never go back. I turned and left, leaving Hailey alone, kneeling and dazed. The night was as dark as if covered by a black curtain, without a star in sight. The next day, I received several video clips. In the videos, Hailey had broken into Tony's home, the very house she had originally given him. All the car keys were reclaimed by Hailey. Even Tony's designer watch, which was bought by Hailey, was taken back. She stripped Tony of all his clothes, claiming they were all borrowed. One cigarette after another was pressed against Tony's skin, just like how she treated me. His face was burnt red, swollen to a ridiculous extent, looking comical and pitiful. Hailey held Tony's head and slammed it hard against the cold floor, causing blood to spread everywhere, yet she wouldn't stop. I'm sorry, Rockey. Hailey seemed quite adept at this sort of thing. When I managed the company's finances, there were never any discrepancies. Since Hailey took over, she squandered recklessly. In just a month, the account showed a shortfall of a full $100 million. Tony was promoted to vice president of Henry Business Group. Now, she was pinning this mismatched accounting issue squarely on Tony to please me. Tony had indeed spent a lot of money following Hailey's extravagant ways. Hailey weakly begged me, Tony's verdict will be out in a couple of days. Brother, can you come back? Silence lasted for 10 minutes. I replied softly, what about you? Don't you deserve to die? Hailey frantically pulled a stack of contracts from her bag. Brother, all the properties and shares are here. Please sign. I was speechless. These shares were earned by me bit by bit, and now you're giving them to me as compensation? She trembled, holding my hand, forcing me to sign those contracts. In her flurry, the pen fell to the ground, the crisp sound of it hitting the floor waking both her and me. Though she had just finished her college entrance exams this year, she looked as worn out as someone in their late 20s. Her grades were poor, and she couldn't get into any good university. When filling out her application, she didn't choose any. I frowned. In the past, I would have persuaded her, but I said nothing, because no matter what, it no longer concerned me. I would not be soft-hearted again. Due to a cardiac tumor, I lay in bed every day struggling to breathe, enduring severe heart pain. Serena took care of my daily meals, kept me company, and at night gently rubbed my chest while singing lullabies to help me sleep. One day, I dreamt of the days right after Bame's death, juggling both my studies and the company while protecting Hailey and helping her fight for the inheritance. I had a sudden cardiac arrest and was rushed to the emergency room. Do you not remember how difficult those days were? The scene shifted and Hailey threw away my medicine, calling me a white-eyed wolf of the Hailey family, saying that raising me was no better than raising a dog. I couldn't sleep all night. Serena lay on me as she slept, and though she was still asleep, she subconsciously hugged me and said, it's okay, okay, everything will be fine. Later, when she accompanied me to the hospital for a follow-up, I vaguely heard Serena leaning against the door outside the operating room with a desperate look on her face, saying, "God, please let David live. I'd rather it be me lying there." Fortunately, my illness was detected early and diagnosed as a benign tumor. On the day I was discharged, she cheerfully held my hand as we went home. Holding her warm little hand, I thought, I must marry this girl. Serena had promised me that if I joined Sam's club, I would be her second in command. After all, her father was the actual power behind Sam's club. I sold half of my shares to Serena, removing Hailey from her position as president. That night, Hailey called, sounding somewhat distressed. "Brother, do you really hate me that much?" I laughed. "What's the matter? You were so generous giving the shares to Tony, and since you don't want them anyway, just let it go." Hailey remained silent for a long time. "As long as you're happy, it's fine." She was really stubborn. No matter how much I hated Hailey, I couldn't go against Bame's last wish. That day, I wanted to meet her and return the remaining 45% of the shares. The chilly autumn wind disheveled her bangs. Hailey's eyes were red as she stubbornly and obsessively stared at me. "Tony's verdict has been delivered. It's life imprisonment." I shook my head with a smile. "It doesn't matter anymore. If you have even a shred of gratitude for my kindness, let's part ways and free each other." Hailey stubbornly held on to me, not letting me go. "No, as long as I accept this money, you will leave. I don't want a single penny. All the properties, cars, and shares are yours, Brother Jian." I coldly shook off her hand. "Hailey, face reality." She crouched on the ground, holding her head in despair. I don't want to. There must be some way out." Seeing Hailey's unrelenting state, I sighed and turned away. Serena lowered her head, slowly walked out, and gently took my hand. "David, we need to go to the hospital for a follow-up." Later, Serena and I got engaged. Serena lifted her skirt, which fluttered like the wings of a white dove, pure and beautiful. She stood before me in her wedding dress and asked, "Do I look good?" At that moment, a subordinate from Henry Business Group called to tell me that Hailey had no place to stay. She was drinking daily at the entrance of my and her old home, mumbling my name, her mental state deteriorating. Their housekeeper had arranged for her to be admitted to the city's best psychiatric hospital for treatment. But Hailey refused to face reality, hiding in corners and trembling, her only remaining word being Rockey. Her condition was severe, and she might never get out. I turned a deaf ear. For me, I had already let go of the name Rockey. From now on, I would start a new life with the name David, which originally belonged to me. I kissed Serena's hand and said to her, "Yes, dear, white looks very nice and suits your complexion." Story over.